Well, we feel like, especially in the manufacturing sector, that the cap and trade legislation would kill us here in the South because it would raise the cost of energy up, that these people, these plants and these people that own these plants and these companies that run them wouldn't be able to compete, and it would just force the paper industry and people like that to shut the doors, because a big cost in the paper industry is the energy part of it.
There are obviously regional differences in energy resources, but there's this huge misconception that somehow the Southeast is behind in renewable energy, when in fact renewable energy has been the backbone of the South really from its origin. If you look at in the 1930s and 40s, we were producing hydroelectricity. If you look at the origin of TVA, its first really production was hydroelectricity. We've been doing biomass in a big way for many, many years. Much of the renewable energy that's produced today in the Southeast is cogeneration at pulp and paper mills. So, there's no real reason to think that the Southeast is behind in renewables. In fact, my home state of Alabama, if you look at the Department of Energy rankings, ranks in the top 5 in renewable energy.
The environmental movement today, my old colleagues in Greenpeace in particular, are basically against forestry. They don't like people to cut trees down. Now, how else do you get wood, the most important renewable resource in the world, not only for building, but also for energy? Wood is about 70% of the renewable energy we use in this world, mostly for cooking and heating, but also in industry. The pulp and paper industry is largely based on using parts of the tree to provide the energy to make the paper. But Greenpeace is opposed to it. So they end up being opposed to the first and second most important source of renewable energy in the world, wood and hydropower. It is beyond reason, so far beyond reason, that many of the positions that are taken by the environmental movement today are actually counterproductive from an environmental point of view. And their opposition to forestry is probably the most important one.
One of the issues that EPA is working on right now is something called the Boiler MACT rule. And the proposals that EPA put out would be terribly restrictive to manufacturers that use boilers in their processes, and that's a very large number of manufacturers, to the point where we're hearing from manufacturers who said if the original rules had gone into effect as planned, the decision would have been simple. They would simply have to close their facility.
Our pulp and paper industry pays real good money. Some of the high-end jobs in the pulp and paper industry have got good wages and benefits. And with this political climate we have now, there's no more manufacturing jobs being created, and these folks have been in these jobs for 25 and 30 years, and that's the only thing they've ever known.
There are a lot of processes across the country that require boilers. Heavy manufacturers, electric utilities. EPA is considering passing Boiler MACT rules that would require anyone operating a boiler to make major upgrades. One study said that for every $1 billion you spend on upgrades, you could place 16,000 jobs in jeopardy. So this is a time when we really need to be making things in America. We need to be concentrating on keeping jobs here, not making the cost of doing business uncompetitive.
Manufacturers use about 30% of the nation's energy output, and it's one of the largest costs that manufacturers have to absorb when they're producing the goods that we all enjoy and that we export to other countries around the world. So in terms of a cost and a product for manufacturers, it's absolutely one of the largest, with of course labor costs.